Good evening. So welcome everyone to the shiur for this evening. Parshas Chukas, series number 42, sorry. Okay, so we'll start off with a shiur which was put to me this is a story of the Tzemach Tzedek. There was a time when the Tzemach Tzedek, I guess you can see it's from the Sefer Chasidim Horishonim. There was a time that Tzemach Tzedek did not say Chassidus. This probably was a time when he was very much under scrutiny from the government and he was very anxious. At any rate, the Rebbe is not saying Chassidus. One day, the Rebbe was it was a weekday and the Rebbe did say Chassidus, and there were Chassidim who didn't know about it. Those Chassidim came forward to the Rebbe and they complained that we came from so far away and we didn't hear Chassidus. So the Tzemach Tzedek said to them, go to Reb Hillel. Reb Hillel Parach was then in Lubavitch. They should go to Reb Hillel to hear Chazar from the Maimer. So they said to the Rebbe, but Kli Sheiny ain't mavashel. The Rebbe is the Kli Rishon, and Reb Hillel would be Kli Sheiny, and the Kli Sheiny doesn't cook. So the Rebbe answers, oh, but Yadzu ledas bei. So now Reb Hillel then taught the Chassidim first page of Cream of Tartar, and he explained to them how a Beinin is gvul and Tzaddik is bli gvul, and the Rebbe is Hamshochas bli gvul b'teich hagvul. This is the story. So the question was put to me, what's this business about Kli Sheiny and Yadzu ledas bei? So the person who had asked the question was under the impression that Kli Sheiny, if it's Yadzu ledas bei, it does cook. The Rebbe, they say to the Rebbe, but the Kli Sheiny doesn't cook. The Rebbe says Yadzu ledas bei. But then if you actually look in halacha, in Shabbos and Siman Shin Yud Ches, you see that the heter of Kli Sheiny is that it doesn't cook, even if it's Yadzu ledas bei. And if it's a Kli Rishon, which is not Yadzu ledas bei, so then it's mutter. So what's the Rebbe answering about that the Reb Hillel is like it's a Kli Sheiny, but it's Yadzu ledas bei. So I answered the person who asked me this question. I asked him that he's getting the wrong Maramokim. The Maramokim he should be looking for is in Hilchos Taruvas and Yeridei Siman Kuf Hey and Sif Beis. There the Shulchan Aruch says the following: Chaim Kli Rishon, that you have at the bottom of the screen. Chaim Kli Rishon sheyadzu ledas bei is mavashel v'oiser kulei. If something is put in a Kli Rishon cooks, and it makes it penetrates the whole thing. Avol chaim Kli Sheiny ein mavashel, but the heat of a Kli Sheiny does not cook. V'yesh oimrim, and some say shegamkein ein maflid v'lei mavliya, that a Kli Sheiny does not cause interaction. V'yesh oimrim de mikol mokem hu maflid mavliya v'oiser kadei klifa. There are those who say, although Kli Sheiny is not mavashel, but it does cause interaction, and it causes a isur kadei klifa. We've gone through this not so long ago about a cup of coffee, let's say, which has got milk, which is not Chalav Yisroel. So Kli Sheiny, we will say there is a concern of Kli Sheiny, although it's not mavashel, but it is going to be maflid or mavliya. It'll cause a taste to be absorbed or to come out from, let's say, from a tray for a cup. To use it in a Kli Sheiny, we wouldn't use it lechatchila because of Kli Sheiny is maflid. Okay, so the way I understand the story here is a bit different. The Chassidim said to the Rebbe that Reb Hillel Parach is a Kli Sheiny, and therefore he doesn't have the same impact. And the Rebbe answers, you're right, but even a Kli Sheiny, when it's Yadzu ledas bei, has the ability to communicate, to impart, to penetrate. It's mafli to mavliya. That's what the Rebbe is answering. And then Rebbe Hillel goes on to explain the difference between what a Rebbe is and what a tzaddik is and what is a beinoni. And so I think that's what the conversation was. Although he's able to be, the Rebbe is confirming, he's able to be mavliya, he's able to chazer the moment where it should penetrate, but he doesn't have the power of bishul, which has, he says, well, explains in Tanya, to cross the borders and really change the gvul, that's something which a Rebbe can do. I think that's what the pshat of the story is. Okay, it's a halachic background, so that's why I put it for today's shiur. Someone asked me just yesterday about it. Okay, he's writing a book about Reb Hillel Parach, so he also wanted to know pshat on this. Okay, let's go on. So last Shabbos I spent, I was in New York, I was at the oil for Shabbos, and there were thousands of Yidden, some of them from Eretz Yisroel, some of them from Chutz La'aretz. And everyone on the Gimel Tammuz wants to have an Aliya. So we have those Eretz Yisroel and the Chutznikas, and several people came over to me. Can I have an Aliya in Amach Chutznik? Can I have an Aliya in Eretz Yisroel? They were reading, what was it last week? It was so the Israelis were reading Chukas, we were reading Kairach, and there was a whole discussion. Can we have an Aliyah? Can a Chutznik be a Balkoira for the Eretz Yisroel or the vice versa? So it was
Could you
quite
share
interesting.
your screen?
So I wasn't up to date with that halacha, and since coming home I checked into this, and here we have what you have on the screen is from a sefer called Yom Tov Sheni Kilchasai.
We don't see the
One has
screen.
really done a lot of work on this topic. Is the
We don't see the screen.
Herman Steter Rov, who was the Rov in Melbourne for many years, and he specialized in yonim of travel, halachas relating to travel. And actually, one of his grandchildren.
Can't see a screen.
Okay. Share screen. Okay.
We don't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Now you can see the screen, yeah? So, he wrote I was saying the Hema Shteter Rov, he wrote his Charles Shuvs are known as Betzela Chochma, and he collaborated with a grandchild and put out a sefer called halachic Bar Mitecha, which is all halachas about travel. But meanwhile, he's, as I say, he's explored this to great extent. It's very relevant for the Shabbos after Nisan. So many Bochrim are going back to Eretz Yisroel after being Ben Azmanim in Chutz La'aretz. It becomes a whole big issue about keeping which Kriyas HaTorah to do. So he's done a lot of work on that. There's another sefer which I saw deals with this, is a sefer from Rabbi Yitzchok Flaxer. I think it's Shari Yitzchok, I think it is. Anyway, but really, as I say, the pioneer on this topic is the Hema Shteter Rov in Betzela Chochma. He is a brother of the Debretina Rov, Moshe Stern, who wrote the series of Be'er Moshe. Anyway, let's read what actually he says. The Shabbos Elu, these Shabbos after Pesach or after Shavuos, depending whatever the situation is, where there's a difference in Kriyas HaTorah between Eretz Yisroel and Chutz La'aretz. So he says quite unequivocally that an Eretz Yisroel visitor to Chutz La'aretz can have an Aliya in the Chutz La'aretz Kriya, and a Chutz La'aretz person who's in Eretz Yisroel can have an Aliya in Eretz Yisroel Kriya, and the same thing, Mincha b'Yom Tov Sheini Shchol b'Shabbos. So an Eretz Yisroel can have an Aliya because it's a time for Kriyas HaTorah regardless. Although in Eretz Yisroel they might be relating a different thing, it doesn't matter. And he goes even further and he says that an Eretz Yisroel visitor could be the Balkoida in Chutz La'aretz, and a Ben Chutz La'aretz in Eretz Yisroel can be the Balkoida for the Eretz Yisroel. So they're very, very flexible on this. They say it's a mana Kriyas HaTorah, although it's not the parsha for you, which you're typically following, but you are allowed to be Balkoida and certainly to have an Aliya. So that's the bottom line. A lot of people about it, but that's the bottom line. Let's move on. Okay, so here is the question number 3 on our list. So someone was asking me this week, several years ago, there was a building campaign for a specific institution, and he was sympathetic to the cause and gave a substantial donation. Several years now, that building never really took off. And so now he's asking the question, can I ask for my donation back? And I will use it for other good purposes. And so this is the halacha which we're going to be looking at. So the the sources are a Rashba and a Rosh. And so the Rashba is the first opinion in Shulchan Aruch here, that's in Siman Yeridei Reish Nun Zayin, and the second opinion is the Rosh. So let's read inside. Money which was collected for Pidyon Shavui. There was a person who was in captivity, and money was raised to release him from captivity. Yesh mishoim shehem shel yorsho. Some say that the money raised and the person died in prison. So some say that the money is going to go to his heirs, to his, it becomes part of his estate. Yesh mishoim. This is the Rosh. He says no. Shleizochu behem yorsho. That does not belong to his heirs. I don't. Others already comment. What's the emphasis of his manazeh? But that seems to be the logic. That the donation was not given with the intention. It was given for pidyon shvuim. It was not given to be the estate for the assignment of whoever that person who died. Similarly, so that's one case of there was a campaign for pidyon shvuim, and unfortunately did not succeed, as in it wasn't needed, unfortunately. And then we have another case. A girl was taken captive, and instead of they wanted to redeem her, and the point she decided to stay with the goyim, and she became shmatzach, and she was off the scene. So now again, so the Rosh says the money was raised for pidyon shvuim. And therefore, if that purpose wasn't materialized, well, then the money was given for a particular purpose. That purpose hasn't been materialized. So, all right, so give it back. It's in other words, what we're seeing here is that it is the das of the donors. Their intent is actually significant here. And if that intent is not going to be fulfilled, then I guess the alternative is to give it back and let the donor deal with it as he sees fit. Obviously, since it's been given for tzedakah, it should be given for tzedakah, but I'll give it for a different tzedakah. That was the question, and I believe that's the answer. Okay, let's go on to the next question. I was in New York, and in a Beis Medrash, someone came over to me that he has got a shlichus somewhere large in the New York area, and they have a shul, like an old shul, and it's got also offices there, and the shul is in poor state. The building it's not worth repairing, and so the plan is to demolish the building and rebuild. Fine. Meanwhile, the shul has to continue functioning, the offices, etc. So they have rented temporary accommodation elsewhere from a Goyish source. And so the question here is, they're going to be, let's say, for 2 years in this second venue, in this temporary venue, and they would want to put up mezuzos. Can they take the mezuzos off the building slated for demolition? Are they allowed to take those mezuzos and bring them over and put them on their temporary accommodation for the next 2 years? So let's read the Shaloch and Shulchan Aruch. We have here towards the end of Hilchos Mezuza. It's worth repeating because there seems to be a bit of ignorance about this. It says, one who rents a house from someone else. So then that's the famous line, Mezuza Choves Hador, that who is responsible to affix a Mezuza? That's the tenant. And if it needs some work done to make a niche in the wall, whatever, in the doorpost, again, that's up to the tenant. If you rented a house on the belief that there is a Mezuza, and it turns out there's no Mezuza, don't call it as a mistaken sale. No, because there is the expression, a person person is pleased to spend money on a mitzvah. Fine. This is what's important to us. But when you leave, you should not take the mezuzah with you. This is the point which I want to share here. That when you leave a rented premises, unless there's going to move in, or there's going to be another heter is if the landlord intends to overhaul, to remodel the place, etc., and therefore the mezuzahs will be exposed to abuse, to disgrace. So then you can take off the mezuzahs to protect them. But to take with your mezuzahs because you want them in your next place, that wouldn't be okay. So here the Ramo adds, if you're concerned about the cost of the mezuzahs, so then the incoming tenant would have to reimburse you for your mezuzahs. Okay, so now here, just 1 second. Sorry. So this is the question here is he's moving from one premises to another, but meanwhile the place which he's moving out from is not slated for demolition yet. It's going to be a few months till that's going to happen. So is he allowed to remove the mezuzahs now? So there we have in one of my favorites for him on Hilchos Mezuza is a sefer called Seichel Toiv, and he brought me to this source, and that is the sefer Das Kedoshim from the Bechurch Rov, and that is goes al Sedra Shulchan Aruch, at least in Hilchos Stam, and he writes the following: Ma shekosav b'Shulchan Aruch sheloi lo haniach Pesach shemefana dirosai mishom beli mezuzah. What's written in Shulchan Aruch that when you vacate a premises, you should not leave it without the mezuzah. So he says, but if you are vacating because the intent is that the building will be demolished, and here this really answers our question. Even if it's going to take some time until the demolition will take place, you are allowed to remove them. It makes an interesting lomdisha line. Since it's slated for demolition, it's as if it were already demolished, and therefore you are allowed to remove the mezuzahs. I see someone's asking a question about the front door of apartments. I'm not fully clear what the question is. Okay, so if you want to write in again what your question is. Meanwhile, we'll go on to the next question. So here are a couple of other questions about mezuzahs came up. And one is, if I go to check the house, check mezuzahs of a house, do I take all the mezuzahs with me, or should I do half and half? So in other words, the question is there any value in dafka leaving some of the mezuzahs in the house and taking some, or is there no difference? So really this really relates to the next question. Is there some kind of leeway of how long you can leave a house without a mezuzah? And it appears that there is no real leeway. On the one hand, we have a obligation to check the mezuzahs periodically. The shiur in Shulchan Aruch is twice in 7 years, and then there's the Rebbe would encourage to do it every Elul, as it's written in the Sefer Matei Ephraim, but there's no clear leeway how much time you have to take it off. This, on the one hand, you have a mitzvah to take. You should be by the mezuzah. It's obvious that whilst you take off the mezuzah, you are missing out on the mitzvah. So now, I just was browsing and found in a particular sefer writes the following. When you take off a mezuzah for bedika, perhaps you should have to put up a replacement right away during the bedika. So this Sefer writes, you must say that the Chachamim were not matriach. They don't cause us such, that we have to make such an effort to put up another Mezuza whilst you're checking the first one. They said you have to check it. And he uses the expression, Yesh koyach b'yad Chachamim la'kedovim min ha'Torah v'sheva al taiseh v'levat l'asibik ha'gavn l'shomu etes. The Chachamim have allowed you to kind of refrain from fulfilling a mitzvah for the short time whilst you are doing the b'dika. So there's no real set time of leeway on how long you can have your mezuzahs off. You do it as quick as you can. So coming back to the previous question about your house with 10 mezuzahs. So if the Mesofa can do all 10 with the same amount of time as 5, so do the whole lot. There's no inyan and dafka leaving part of the mezuzahs on and some of the mezuzahs off. I don't see a source for that. There are, having said that, there are Rishonim who hold that mezuzah is only that's one per there's a view mentioned that only one mezuzah per house is min haTorah, but generally that's not accepted. And therefore, I think if it's not going to cause any more or less delay, you can take off all the mezuzahs in one go and get them all checked and put them back on and one after together. So now G5 has come back with the question about the apartment. So if you have an apartment building and there's a front door, if there are goyim and yidden living in that apartment, that front door does not require a mezuzah, because I think this is a Simresh Tzadik in Hilchos Mezuzah, where it says if it's a shutfus, mezuzahs beisecho, v'lo shel shutfus, it's a partnership with a goy, that kind of dwelling does not require a mezuzah. So I hope that answers your question. Right, let's move on. So someone asked me this week about Cream of Tartar. Now, I did a little bit of homework on this, and Cream of Tartar is a byproduct of the winemaking process. And this person had used Cream of Tartar. Apparently, it's in when you make Play-Doh. So you have to cook it, and don't ask me any more details. I don't know, but it does involve using this Cream of Tartar. And she's asking about whether to have to kosher the pot. Obviously, this Cream of Tartar is not from Jewish wine, so it's from Stam Yenom. So now, all right. So she's asking now. In the past she's used one of her regular pots for making the Play-Doh. Does she need to kosher the pot? So I saw in several sources the same conclusion, that really Cream of Tartar isn't asur, and let's read the reason why. So this is from one of numerous forum. It's a contemporary sefer. It's a sefer. In the notes I have Ben Yisroel La'amim by someone called Teherani. But this is I've seen in several contemporary forum, and that is, let's read what he says here in the Hebrew. Tartaric acid. Now, I might be wrong. My impression was that Cream of Tartar and tartaric acid are basically the same thing, but if I'm wrong, so then okay, I'm wrong. So tartaric acid, which is made from the Even Hayayin, which is the solids, like whatever what's it called, like you have the scale in the barrels, and it was left for 12 months, and then it's made into powder, and then it's dried out, and then it's washed with various chemicals. Washed as that. So once it's gone through such a thorough process, you're allowed to use it without any concern, and you can even use it for making wine, for Miss Mahadrin. Okay, so he's got a couple of sources here. Basically, though, he's saying that this tartaric acid is mutter. Now, someone put on the thing the word lees. Lees is actually what's called the shmorim, which is the bottom of the thing, which will ferment and give the alcoholic taste. No, that would be usur. But here we're talking about some kind of byproduct which really has no taste, no wine taste to it at all. And what we're seeing here is that doesn't have Isser of Bishul of Goyish wine, and certainly, and if you want to be machmir not to use a kosher pot for doing so, that's your choice. But to say you have to kosher the pots, the answer is definitely you don't need to. Okay, let's move on. If we finish a little bit earlier, I ask for Mechila. So then so the question number 8 was about the bracha on tortilla. For those who don't know, tortilla is it's a Mexican type of cracker bread, and usually it's made from maize, and therefore tortilla is shahakal. But apparently it's quite popular to have tortilla made of wheat. It's quite popular in Eretz Yisroel. Someone sent me a picture of a packet made from wheat. I looked up and saw that the tortilla is actually made with a dough, which is rolled and kneaded, etc. And therefore, it's a mamash. It's a hamotzi dough. It's made with flour and water, so it's the bracha is hamotzi. You've got something similar called the wraps. Now, wraps are a typical thing where you have various vegetables or whatever, and perhaps meat rolled in, and it's a whole meal. It's kivea suda, and therefore it is. And in any case, even the wrap itself is just flour and water, so it's hamotzi. I saw several sources that they say that this tortilla made from wheat is hamotzi. It's made just with flour and water, perhaps. What I saw an interesting twist that one of the contemporary poskim, whatever, says that if you eat tortilla with a filling, it's hamotzi, because that's a derech kaveh suda. If you eat tortilla alone without any filling, that's not the normal way of eating it. And there he wants to suggest it's mezainis, but fine. But that's an interesting halach. But as they are, the tortilla made from wheat flour are hamotzi. Okay. The next point which we have here was that last week we discussed about the bracha I mentioned last week about the Alter Rebbe in Sedra Birchas Hanehenin has got this very interesting halachic that when you've got cooked vegetables cooked together with pieces of meat, so he says that the meat requires a separate bracha. And we were asking, why is that not comparable to, let's say you've got some raisins in a salad? You don't make a separate bracha on the raisins in, let's say if you take coleslaw and mix in raisins, or you mix in pomegranate grains, you wouldn't make a separate bracha because they are there to flavor the salad. So why should the meat in a cholent or something, why should that be entitled to a separate bracha? And the answer which I gave last week was, someone had suggested that the presence of those fruit in the salad is only when they are there. You take them out, they don't give any flavor. You take the raisins out of the salad, so they're not going to have the flat salad will have hardly any raisin flavor. Whereas if you cooked meat with vegetables and you remove the meat, the taste in the vegetables, the meat taste is there. So the fact that you leave the meat with the vegetables even after you've cooked is because you want to eat the meat. So again, raisins in a salad are only flavoring when they are there. Therefore, they are tofu. Meat is flavoring even when it's not there. So if it is there, it's there as a meichel, not just as a flavor. That was the svara which I gave over last week. So someone asked, but you're not allowed to, are you allowed to do this on Shabbos? Or really remove raisins from a salad, remove meat from a cholent? So the simple answer is we weren't talking about Hilchos Shabbos, we were talking about Hilchos Boirer. But coming back though to the question, is it a question of Boirer or not? So here, if you want to remove the raisins from the salad because you want to eat the raisins now, that is okay. You're allowed to move them pick them up with your fingers. Biyad, miyad, so if you want to eat those raisins now, you can pick them out and eat them. Similarly, if you have a cholent and you've got bits of meat and you want to take out those pieces of meat to eat them now, that would be okay. We've gone through this before. If you wanted to take out those pieces of meat to use them later, so even though it's oichel min absoilus or oichel min oichel actually, then you wouldn't be allowed to, because the heter of oichel taking out biyad is only for miyad. If it's for la'achas man, then that would not be okay. So that's fairly straightforward. Finally, so we have, whilst I'm switching the page, about the last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, we had about kol mayone boch and kol mayone boch. So someone sent me, one of the listeners sent me a link to a recording of the Rebbe davening at the Omid. And you can hear the Rebbe at the end of Tehillim. So he says, V'shorim kecholim kol koil mayone boch. So I find that actually very, very interesting, because if you remember that discussion, kol is when there's a makaf, when there's a hyphen connecting it to the next word. Koil is when it's disconnected. So if you wanted to say both gersois, it would make more sense to say koil and then kol mayone boch. Yet I listened carefully. The Rebbe said, as I said, he said kol koil mayone boch. Possibly, we discussed it last time. In principle, you say what's written in the Sedra. And the Rebbe is saying Tillim. The Tillim says kol mayone boch. So first of all, he says what's in front of him on the text. He says kol. Then he also throws in the koil, because there's the other girsa, and so he says also koil. Which is, by the way, the Rebbe did this also for Zecher, Rav Tuvcho, Zecher, and several places where it's mentioned Hayom Yom, do it one way, and the Rebbe would say both of them. Is that Hayra the Rabbim? I wouldn't think so. But do Rabbim do it? The answer is yes. Okay, let's go on, and that's the last question on our list. And so, as I say, I apologize for being a bit quicker than usual or shorter than usual, but it's only mochel. May one draw water from a water cooler on Shabbos? So we have in Shul, we have a machine which has a large bottle on top, and it's got, you press a button and cold water comes out. So the question here is, does drawing water activate the thermostat to realize, wait a minute, it's getting too warm here, I'm going to have to switch on the cooler again? This is the question. So looked around, and this I found in a sefer from the late Rav Belsky. Aliya Shalom was a very prominent Rav in New York, passed away about 3-4 years ago. And he addresses mitkan mayim, a water fountain, which has got 2 taps, one for hot water, one for cold water. Are you allowed to use the cold water on Shabbos? So further on in the sefer, there's a bit more discussion, but let's just read his conclusion. Shuva, answer, there's no issur to remove a small amount of cold water from the machine, because it's unlikely that should activate the cooling element by just drawing a small amount of water. To draw hot water is usur even on Yom Tov. It's very likely that would activate the heating element. Then he adds v'hamedaktikim, those who are more particular, nimnoim ilishtamesh b'machsher zeh v'shabbos v'yom tov af l'mayim karim. Those who are more conscientious will not use a water cooler, not draw water from a water cooler, neither Shabbos or even at Yom Tov, even for cold water. Shabbos, and they would disconnect it, I guess, either from the water supply or for the electricity supply on Erev Shabbos. I remember, Taka, when I was learning in yeshiva in Eretz Yisroel for Chabad, so they had a water machine, a water thing in the just outside the Zal, and for Shabbos it was switched off. So that seems to remain the Machmirim would not use it. Din, we see that just a little bit of water seems to be okay. All right, we'll stop with that a little bit early, quite a bit early, and I wish you all a good Shabbos and Aliya.